Spent countless hours in the garage with your dad. Now investing in that old car and working on it with your son reminds you of him. And his legacy lives on. Fund your passion with a low-interest home equity line of credit from Bank of Blue Valley.
Oh, look at that, Will. Do you like that little turn? I'm on a rolling chair. How are you doing?
Like it, man. It was like a little Collinsworth-esque Monday Night Football. Looked good.
Yeah, no, that's what I was going for. We actually have a sports section on the show sponsored by Bank of Blue Valley where we ask sports questions. And it's a little bit of a sports-themed show. But also we were talking about backgrounds. And I heard your coworkers were giving you a hard time for your background. So you got a printer in there now.
Got a printer. I've heard from many people it's kind of a prison vibe, prison office vibe. So I don't know that that's exactly what I was going for, but haven't done anything about it in the last month. So I got some work to do. Look at you. I mean, that is a great setup you have.
Well, I am actually in the office. We had a board meeting today, and I think we voted on some stuff, but just a lot of good stuff. So this is not my office, but what I was going to say is our guest that's about to be popping on, and you were talking about backgrounds. So this is just an office, but I interviewed with Aaron Fulk, who is not feeling well, so she's a little under the weather. This is the first time in 2 years she's ever missed a show, and we've hosted well over 300 executives. So she's a steel, awesome superhero mom, superhero entrepreneur. So a lot will have to take her down. But we interviewed the mayor of Kansas City, Quentin, and I was in the bathroom trying to hide from my children. So I think the lesson learned is it doesn't really matter where people are from. It's just how we host. But, how is your week going before we bring on our special guest? What's cooking in the world of Bank of Blue Valley?
Hey, it's a great week, finishing up, the second, month into the year. And, it's been a lot of fun at Bank of Blue Valley. I've been here just over 6 months, and every week is like a new opportunity to go meet new clients and prospects that have had, decades with the organization. And we've had the opportunity to bring over a lot of new names as well. So, it's the fun part of the job, and I'm really enjoying getting out and meeting with the people that are legacy clients here at Bank of Blue Valley.
Well, it's awesome. Well, we have some people chiming in that are in the audience. So tell us who you are and where you're tuning in from. Is it YouTube? Is it LinkedIn? Is it Facebook? Are you out of town? Are you really smart and are your toes in the sand? But with that, we are going to bring on our special guest. I will let him give his personal background, but he is someone who has mentored lots of people in Kansas City throughout the years, especially Top Gun Kansas City and The Loop. He's one of the coolest executives in Kansas City, and he's also incredibly nice. Tom Collins. Look at that music. Aaron's got it. So Aaron is experimenting. I think this is the only time she'll have to do this. So Tom, it's a short question, but a long answer. Who are you and how do you get to Kansas City today?
Wow. Hey, well, thanks for having me on the show. First and foremost, I appreciate it. My name is Tom Collins. I'm not sure I understand the question about how you get to Kansas City today.
Well, you were born here, you grew up here, but where does your career path go after undergrad?
Got it. Right. So, I'm a lifelong Kansas City guy. Lived in a stint in Chicago, went to school in South Bend, Indiana, but have been back here for many, many years. Grew up here. I went to St. Thomas Aquinas High School. Kansas City, one of the only towns in America where you still have to say where you went to high school. and people recognize that. And then after college in South Bend, I lived in Chicago for a few years, and consider that my second home. I still have a ton of friends there, travel a bunch, but came back here about 20 years ago, in fact. And my background is a little bit of finance, a little bit of operations. I grew up in the world of Big Four accounting with PricewaterhouseCoopers and then Grant Thornton, and found my way into consulting for private equity companies in the late, like the 2005, 2010 time period, until I was eventually hired by one of my clients, and I've never looked back. Today, I am the president and CFO at Dimensional Innovations. I've been here for almost 7 years now. And it's, DI is kind of this really unique place. It's absolutely perfect for me. I'm not your typical sort of finance accounting person. I actually technically hate accounting. It's the irony of all of it. It was a great education for me. And I love the sort of chaotic, unusual environments, and that's totally what DI is.
So what does the future of your organization look like? And then talk to us a little bit about how you weathered the storm of COVID and the pandemic, because not all your associates can be remote. Give everyone an idea of the business and the future.
Sure. So DI is an experienced design company. So we are a design firm, we're a fabricator, we're a technology company, and we merge all of those things, all those different disciplines, to build remarkable experiences all over the country. So for us, COVID was really, really unique because the vast majority of our work, right, we do work in sports, we do work in corporate offices, we do work in healthcare, museums, entertainment, retail venues, you name it. Every one of our clients and potential clients was really hit hard by COVID. So I'm super fortunate to have such an adaptable and incredibly talented team that we went, in March of 2020, we went virtual within, 48 hours, basically, and then just spent the better part of the last 18 months really reading, reacting, and in many cases trying to reinvent ourselves to keep up with a world that, has changed really dramatically in the last 22 months.
Wow, that's super impressive. I never knew that about the last 48 hours. So I'm going to ask one question. I'm going to toss it over to Will. One thing that my organization has really benefited from is having a relationship with Dimensional Innovations and the culture that you have, and then also the candor that you have with all your teammates and shooting people straight and knowing where they stand. And that's one thing that, if I'm ever talking to someone about Tom Collins, I go, hey, you don't want to hang out with them if you don't want his opinion, but also you want to hang out with them because you want his opinion. So for you, where did you learn that lesson along the way of making sure to, obviously you're wonderful with authenticity, but I call it radical candor. Where did you pick that up along the way, and how has that helped you in your career?
Two things for me. One of my mottos is strong opinions, lightly held, right? Which is, I'm a huge believer in that people need to take a stance and have their opinion. I may disagree with it, but that's where great conversation and many times great relationships and great friendships are born. And it started with my parents. My dad is arguably the most balanced person on the face of the planet, but he always has strong opinions and is willing to engage with people. And I learned at a really young age the value of having, frank conversations with people, no matter how difficult the topic is, but to always be willing and open to listening with respect and engaging folks in conversations. And, for me personally, that's been such a huge part of who I am as a person. And I wanted to find a company that subscribed to that. And my partner, my business partner and our CEO, Tucker Trotter, is like the definition of that himself. And so we try and instill that every day we can with all of our team members and our clients as well, frankly.
Will, see if I can get this right, because I got to turn the opposite way when I look at you. What is running through your mind in terms of questions you have for Tom?
Well, one thing that I was thinking about, and Tom, this must be a particularly fun time of year where you've had a lot of your projects on the national stage, between Pro Bowl, Super Bowl. I mean, heck, I had no idea all the different sporting venues you touch. Maybe you could talk to the audience a little bit about some of those projects and what they don't even know is some of your work that you've done.
Yeah. So, and our work really shows well visually. So the best place to see our work is on our website, www.dimin.com, because then you can actually see the graphic presentation. We do a lot of work with video as well, and it shows really well. But to the two things you touched on, first was the Super Bowl was just held at SoFi Stadium in LA. We were out there for many years doing projects, everything from the actual SoFi letters on the top of the roof. So like on the top of the stadium, when you see Goodyear blimp flying overhead, that's our work on the top. And then if you're in the stadium, we helped with almost every brand activation inside the stadium. So brands with, like the names of American Airlines, Pepsi, SoFi themselves, to a variety of other folks. We help them bring their brand story to life in the actual facility itself. And then in Las Vegas, we did, a completely different project. We were deeply involved in the fabrication of the Al Davis Memorial Torch. So if you ever see Allegiant Stadium, one of the feature moments when they have a game in there is that torch. It's 9 stories tall. It is, we believe, the largest 3D printed object in the world. And we did all that work here in Kansas City.
Can you also talk a little bit about the whole procurement process of a 3D printer that, in theory, you're pioneering a space. So how does one, like a CFO and president, go about acquiring a piece of equipment like that?
Well, I'll try to tell the story without sounding wildly irresponsible. But the story is actually a really cool one and it really is how DI operates. So we were presented with a challenge from the architects and the team that had a limited budget, a limited timeline, but very specific design criteria that they wanted this torch to look like the Chicago bean, but then it had all these other requirements that it couldn't be. It had to be so much weight. They wanted it to produce fire, but not be real fire because it was indoors. I mean, just a laundry list of criteria. And we evaluated them and said, listen, there's no way you can do this. And, we were trying to be really responsible on the risk side and then pose the question to, a larger subset of our team. And a couple of the folks in our innovation lab said, well, wait a second, there's one thing we could do. What if we 3D print it? And we thought, well, that sounds great, minus the fact that we do not have a 3D printer. So literally 48 hours after the idea was hatched, Tucker and our innovation lab team drove to Dale, Indiana to see our friends at Thermwood, which is a machine manufacturer that we've worked with for many years, and discovered that there was actually a machine that would allow us to pull this off. So we evaluated all the numbers, we engaged some consultants, and eventually hatched a plan to 3D print and then put a metal skin around it, and the rest is history.
So how often do those problems get presented to your teams, maybe not of that sort? And then how do you help people kind of, to your way of thinking, of have a strong opinion, but don't hold on to it too tightly? How do you get all those teams to collaborate? And is that part of the hiring process? I mean, that just takes a unique individual.
Yeah, that's well said, Scott. For us, there's a couple of things that we really look for in folks, and it's that entrepreneurial spirit. You have to be really committed to what we're trying to do to our clients, and then your own beliefs. You have to be willing to collaborate through uncertainty, and then have the guts to stand up in a very real and transparent way and say, this is what I believe and why. And what we try to do with our clients is have those conversations all day long. The number of different types of phone calls and emails we get from people, really lend itself to that, which is, I have this crazy problem. I don't know how to solve it, and then what we do is our team is, such a unique and diverse skill set that we can pull from designers, fabricators, full stack software developers, engineers, project managers, you name it. We're pulling all these diverse skill sets to get together and really tackling some of the biggest problems that businesses face today.
Will, I'm going to ask a boring business question, so feel free to step in if you want to interrupt me.
Well, no. One thing I was going to ask, and And Tom, because of your experience and having, being president, CFO, operating background, and consulting before that, Scott and Aaron's following is everywhere from, very experienced professionals to, some people that are entrepreneurs and really getting out on their own for the first time. And I've seen some of the questions of past episodes. But I would be curious if, thinking of people in those shoes that are maybe evaluating their first capital expenditure or their first, capital purchase. They're hiring their first worker, in this kind of unique high inflation geopolitical environment where, there's not a ton of people to select from in the workforce. What are some thoughts that are going through your mind as a large, national player, and any advice that you might have to some of the entrepreneurs out there?
Yeah, that's a great question. For me, the question, whether it's about hiring, whether it's about investing, or where it's about, who you're going to have lunch with or have a drink with after work, it's all about return. And it's not just your own personal return, though, right? It's return for everybody involved. I'm a huge believer in that, right? Looking at things from a self-interested point of view never works out. So it's what's the total return that we're talking about in a particular situation. So, for an entrepreneur who's looking to hire, it's what's the return for the business? What's the return for that person and their work-life integration or their work-life balance? And then what's the return for the person coming in? Are they ready to be part of an entrepreneurial environment? And I think if you start to ask questions of return, but think about it more holistically, I'm just a huge believer in that, in both in life and in business.
Man, you got me totally sidetracked. I was going to ask a question about traction and entrepreneurial operating, but that's a boring question. So I'm trying to trigger in my internal Aaron Fulk and talk about, Dimensional Innovations. Everyone flocked to even get a job at Dimensional Innovations. It was the pinnacle of creativity and entrepreneurship and a great culture. But yet, with wage inflation, it's got to be super tough. And with a shrinking pool, what are some of the ways that you're balancing, the remote in person or retracting? What are those topics that are percolating in your four walls to attract the best talent?
Yeah, that's a question that I'm talking to business leaders literally all over the country about. Everyone is having some type of conversation around that. And for us, it's twofold, right? Which number one is making sure that we're showing our existing team, how much we care about them, how valuable they are to DI, and what a special thing it is that we're all building here together. Like that's priority number one. But number two is we start to, climb back to our sort of, we had some incredible growth pre-COVID, and we're starting to see that again. We're actively trying to attract talent. I think we have like 15 open spots today across a variety of different roles. And for us, it's all about showing people who we are. And at the same time, telling them, being very transparent to your earlier question, Scott, about who DI is and what we try to do and what we're trying to accomplish. Because this place isn't for everybody. It's fast paced. It can appear a little wild at times because of all the creativity around it. But the diversity in conversations and the skill sets and the people that we interact with, we provide, or at least we like to think we provide, a really dynamic and unique environment, particularly here in Kansas City.
Will, what's percolating in your head before I prevent myself from asking a boring internal mathematical question here?
No, it's funny. I was going to ask something around the eye or along the same line, because DI, when you drive, if you're commuting from Johnson County to downtown Kansas City and you're on 35, you're the DI sticks out, right? The building looks great, and you've kind of got this cool cachet about yourself as well. But maybe you could talk to again, going back to the entrepreneurs, where you started from at DI to where you sit today from a population. What did that look like, and what are some things that you would some lessons learned, good and bad, that took place along that journey?
Yeah, so we're coming up on 30 years in business, And it all started from a small design firm, then ultimately a sign shop, that had 6 or 7 people that was printing giant letters. Ultimately, for what became our biggest client at one point in time, AMC theaters. Lots of big A's and M's and C's on the sides of movie theaters. But as the big multiplex era came about, we started to move into interiors and thinking about the experience of our ultimate end clients. That led us ultimately into the world of sports, and with Kansas City being the sports architecture capital of the United States, that was a real foray for us, 20 years ago, that allowed us to really diversify our business. And then you look back about 10, 12 years ago, we leaned really, really hard into the digital space and technology. And that's been another really big pivot for us. And now we sort of bring all of this where we like to say that we marry the digital world and the physical world, and where they come together to create an experience, that's where we live. And so we talked a little about the sports projects earlier, and for us, we're continually more and more excited about finding traction in spaces in the museum world, entertainment and retail. Children's healthcare has been a really big market and fast growing market for us. So we just continue to find the opportunity to change experience in all these different environments. And that's what allows us to keep growing and offer people new and different opportunities, because new people learn about it and learn about us and find us every day.
Will, I think we always joke about, you're like, well, this is new on the whole hosting a podcast thing, but you're just hitting home runs, no sports pun intended, with your question, which leads into, Tom, you presented with so many ideas, and there's so many things that you have to think, are we going to invest in? Are we going to move forward on this? That has to be so difficult. How do you as a team make the decision on what the future looks like and what you're going to pour your investment into people and the resources to get there? How do you make that decision?
So it's twofold, right? One, there's obviously some analytics that we perform, but really what it's about is listening to our team and the market. We are, our clients have driven our strategy for 20 years. That's how we evolved in the world of sports. That's how we've gotten deeper into technology. And today we're constantly asking our leadership team and our management team about what are we hearing from our clients? What are we hearing from our team members? Where do we need to go next? What do we need to consider investing in? We're having those conversations, literally on a weekly basis today. And that's really how we drive it. It's not anything more complicated than that, but it's truly just about listening to our team who's out there listening to our clients.
Will, I'm going to turn around to you for a little question, then I want you to ask the question at a time. But for you at Bank of Blue Valley, how are you making decisions on hiring? Because it's such a crazy world out there. How are you finding, with your strong brand in the community, to focus on looking externally to add more people as you grow?
Well, I selfishly was asking Tom some questions earlier because he's done such a good job of building a culture, right? And so, Bank of Blue Valley, we've gone from $1.5 billion organization to part of a $20 billion organization, and that does take a big investment in human capital, right? So, what I would say though is that it's been very measured, and philosophically, you can go a lot of places and get a loan, right? Get money, there's a very commoditized process. But where Tom has aligned himself with his customers, because I hear him talk about being the advisor. Hey, we've got a problem, or we got an idea, don't know how to do this. What are your thoughts? Those are the types of individuals that we're trying to recruit. People that are more than just a transaction and order taker, someone who can be an advisor, and we're just going to take our time until we find the right people. And we've been very successful adding, one at a time, right? I would have loved to say that we could go out and pluck 5 at a time, but it's just not the way it is in this industry. But I think that for us, everything Tom talked about earlier really resonated with me and what we're trying to accomplish. We want to be that seat at the table where people can come and think of us as an advisor, and it may not be something that they want to do today, but we're here to have conversations about now and into the future. So It's funny, there's a lot of different industries and there's a lot of different, industry jargon and vernacular, but I think being an advisor and recruiting and hiring advisors is key to a lot of the companies that you've had on your show and what we want to accomplish here.
So, Tom, as we have 5 minutes left, there's a curveball question. So, knowing you probably got your master's, or CPA. So, let's go back to 24, depending upon how many degrees you got. When you were 24 years old, we have a lot of young listeners that listen to this show. You've always given such great advice. But today, in your mind, if you were 24, what would you do differently in your career that you'd like to tell others that they should focus on?
Oh, that's a great question. Who else listening before I answer that?
It typically like 1,500 to 3,000 people will see this.
Yeah. No, so that's a great question. And the way I would answer that, right, is I think I like to tell people in that scenario to do one of two things, right? Either take big risk or get well-rounded experience that you're definitely going to learn from, right? And at that point in my career, I did the latter. There are times that I always wonder, gosh, what if I had taken a bigger risk? Because at that point in time, you have plenty of time to recover. You're going to learn something in the process, and you're going to be better for it one way or the other, right? So that's why I always lean to the risk side. But if you're not comfortable with that, broaden your horizons as much as you can, and don't be afraid to fail and learning something that's going to help you no matter what you do. So,
man, maybe I subscribed too much to the Tom Collins University. That was a great answer. And as I was thinking about this, is I wish that there's so many restrictions with COVID, but I always feel like I wish DI would give almost like a business education university on the ways that you do it, because you guys always say that you're always learning every day, because you really are, and you make plenty of mistakes, but this is what you're learning from it, and these are the outcomes of it. Not all are good or bad. So that being said, what do you want people to leave with in terms of when they think of DI or when they're thinking about their next career moves that you want the audience to know?
Yeah, and I think whether it's this is a unique place with unique people, right? Whether it's for our clients and potential clients, about we want to be right in there with them, solving the craziest and toughest challenges that they face every day. And from a talent perspective, we want people who want to do that, right? Like, who are willing to wake up every day not knowing what that day may hold, but also willing to be ready to have an opinion on some really tough questions. And again, that's we're like, like finds like in that world, we've discovered. And so we're in the business of finding more of that every day.
All right. Well, and we really hope that Aaron is feeling better. There's a lot of comments in the comment section. I know I'm not doing a good job. Usually Aaron riles up the audience and tells people where they're from. But there we go, Jeanette. I love that you are doing that in the Midwest. Janae, very good to see you. Toby Leach, the Fabricators and Design DI builds are amazing. The Boulevardia guitar is one of my huge favorites.
Another great example.
And, the great Harry Campbell, Hoosier Land. I don't know if you do any work with Indiana University. But one quick thing, my biggest fear in life is reading out loud, and just did it. I'm dyslexic, so that was my big fear when I was in 4th and 5th grade. Actually, really, since I was like in 1st grade.
You did great. You did great.
Thankfully, there weren't Boulevardia. Maybe it's because I drank that I knew that terminology. But if I was a young 5th grader watching this show, I would not have picked that up. But Aaron and I really want to thank Bank of Blue Valley. We want to thank Will for being our co-host. And I heavily encourage anyone the opportunity to follow DI on social media, to follow the company and their 15 open spots. I'm incredibly biased, but my friends and my partners have learned so much from Tom and his partners and his companies, and we're all truly blessed to have Dimensional Innovations in Kansas City. Tom, thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of the week.
Hey, thank you guys for hosting. Aaron, hope you feel better. Take care.